Hi, my name is Siphokazi Jonas. I want to start by apologizing to the entire African continent for embarrassing my people in another land. This is about the evening I unfortunately played into the stereotype of the barefooted African walking at midnight down the dark streets of California from an event to my motel. Look, I know what you're thinking, although I don't know what you're thinking. But whatever you're thinking, it's just not what you think. This was a bucket list item when I had taken a solo trip, my first ever international trip, to go and watch a poetry event. Not just any poetry event, but the biggest poetry event in the world. And my dream was one day to be on that stage. But this year, I was just there as a spectator. Now, the irony, of course, is that this was the same girl who had been too nervous to leave home for university, moving from Queenstown to Cape Town, from this small town to a large city. The same woman who was terrified in 2011 when she had to take her first domestic flight. I have this fear of being lost, and yet I'm fascinated by pursuing the unknown. So on this trip, where I'd hustled and risked some friendships by borrowing money to make this trip, I packed both my fear and my fascination and went over 30 hours to the US. I was sitting in the second row, watching in awe, and yet I had no idea that after this event, a couple of things would happen that would sour the experience a little bit. Firstly, I would lose contact with my hosts. I was unable to connect to the Wi-Fi. My phone didn't have enough space to download the Uber app. I didn't know how to call a cab, and no one was friendly enough to actually offer help and ask where I was going. I'm hearing these two voices in my head. On the one side is my mom, who is crying, saying, "Oh, mtanam, phofu uyazithanda izinto Siphokazi, usiyaphi?" On the other hand is my dad, always focused on the solution, who's like, "No, Ntombi, yenzi plan, yenzi plan." Of course, they're in South Africa. They're sleeping at this point. But these are the voices that I'm hearing in my head. And so I did the things. I made a plan. Took off my wedge heels and started a 5-kilometer trek barefoot back to my motel. There was crying, there was singing, a lot of prayer. And I remember how I tensed when this black and white police car passed me, and all I could think was, it's 2015, I'm black, I'm foreign, I'm walking down these streets. I wouldn't even know how to begin to explain this. Eventually, I arrive at the motel to a deluge of messages from my host. The following year, I'm in that same venue, standing on stage this time, not as a spectator, but as a performer. And I'm looking at this mic, the light hitting more than the moment. And I'm barefoot.